Hey, Smart Chiropractors, welcome to another Smart Chiropractor show in our featured guest segment. And today I am happy to sit down and chat with somebody quite a few miles away from where I'm sitting right now. And that is Dr. Catherine Quinn of the BCA and of Cleve Chiropractic. Catherine, thanks for coming on and chatting today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I don't know how many thousands of miles, but it's a fair few.
It is a little ways. I know you and I first connected years ago, just before the WFC event in Berlin, and we recently saw each other again at Parker. And you are what I consider to be one of the primary young leaders in our profession. For the docs out there that might be unaware, you are the president of the British Chiropractic Association. I guess I'd love to trace back the origin of that a little bit. We'll get there, but how did you decide you wanted to become involved? Once you graduated school, there's a lot of options on how involved anybody can or cannot be. What was your passion and what got you ignited to become involved in the organization of the BCA?
Yeah, great question. So I would say my absolute passion when I graduated was to work in sport. That was always the goal. I had spent, so before I even trained to be a chiropractor, I had done a sports science degree. I'd competed myself to world championship level at karate. So I knew karate was never going to pay the bills, unfortunately. So it was not a sport to kind of pin your career on. But once I retired from that, left my sports science degree and went on to do chiropractic, I knew I wanted to get back into that world of it again. So yeah, once I graduated from the ACC in Bournemouth, I set about kind of progressing that part of my career. So I was, right place, right time, had done a huge amount of volunteering, got myself in with a Premiership rugby union side and started work with them for a couple of years. Was kind of stolen by a Premiership football club. They're now not in the Premiership, they're now in the Champ, but taken on by them. And that was my passion. So I suppose the leadership roles came about because of the difficulties I saw for chiropractors working in sport. There was probably only a handful of us that were working at that kind of elite level of sport. And it seemed to me that you had to be in the right place at the right time. You had to have the right contacts with the right people, which is very important. And I don't underplay the complete value of that. But I wanted to see that chiropractic was respected as a profession rather than just the individual. I could have been any profession in their mind, actually. They wanted me to work with their team. Being a chiropractor was almost like a bit on the side of that. So I wanted to see that anyone who was a chiropractor was going to be given the same respect by people working at that elite level of sport specifically. And so that, I think, is what prompted me to try and kind of get involved, and started with conference committees and all sorts of things. But I wanted to make that change, a bit more respect for our profession.
That's a great way to go about it. If we traced it back even a little bit earlier, I don't believe I know the answer to this one. I'm personally curious. How'd you get interested in chiropractic to begin with? Does this go back? Do you have a family lineage? Was there an injury? Was it a family aspect of this? Or how did you become desiring to become a chiropractor?
Yeah, so I'm one of the kind of very few back from when I went to uni anyway, who aren't related to a chiropractor. I know that was kind of a big part of it, particularly back in the day. Not so much now. We're getting more and more diversity in people applying. But my road into chiropractic was when I was competing in karate. I took a bit of a kick to the head, obviously dropped my guard a little bit, didn't do that again. Slight kind of, whiplash type effect. I had some jaw issues from being knocked around in the face during that unfortunate kick. And that was then a family friend suggested, see a chiropractor. This is a friend of mine that I see, go see this person. And so I went, saw this chiropractor, found it fascinating, the speed at which they were able to kind of diagnose and get me back into the dojo competing properly. And I just loved the fact that it was hands-on. And I'd always considered by that point, I was considering physiotherapy, medicine, something healthcare related for when I'd retired, at the ripe old age of 21 from karate. But saw a chiropractor and just thought, that's what I want to do. That's the type of healthcare I'm interested in. It's practical. It'll keep me involved in sport. And it just seemed a lot more interesting than some of the other options on the market.
Yeah, that the natural components of it, the hands-on component, I think are why so many of us get involved. Day in and day out, I know you are very busy between your obligations at the clinic, at the practice, with the association. Let's dive into mindset a little bit. How does a positive mindset play a role in your daily life? Are you a book reader? Are you a podcast listener? And perhaps how do you consider maintaining a resilient and positive mindset day in and day out? So many docs out there can feel siloed at times, and you're somebody that is well connected. You're engaged on so many fronts. How do you protect your mindset, and how do you maintain a positive mindset with all you have going on?
Fantastic question. And you know what? Not easily all of the time is my really honest answer. I have learned to plan my time a little bit better, not to say yes to absolutely everything, to delegate, which I still find very difficult to do. I want to be available and do everything for everybody, but I have learned over the last 5 years as president that that's not possible. I think some of the things you've hit on there, reading. I love to read. I say I read every night before bed. Sometimes I might just sleep, but reading's a fantastic outlet for me. And podcasts, as you mentioned, I'm currently listening to A Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, who is on the UK's Dragon's Den. And he talks a lot about this. And I'm right back at the very start of his podcast. And there's a lot of the things that he's saying at this point of his podcast, which is actually 4 years ago, that really resonate with me. And it's, I will keep my language clean for now, but he says you can't predict what the BS is, but you can predict that it will be there. There will always be BS when you're in leadership, when you're running an organization, when you're dealing with people, stuff will happen. So you need to come up with a way that's going to, put your oxygen mask on first. It's that cliche stuff, I know. And I honestly have been dreadful at it for years and years. So when a few years ago, I made a decision to leave London, which is where I was working for all sorts of reasons. And I up sticks, moved 2 hours across west, which I know in the US is nothing, but in England, that's a long way. That's long way from family. And I started again here in Bristol, and I did it with that exact plan of I need to change my routine, or I need to have a routine. Actually, I didn't have one at all. So I think routine is key, and building in things that give you a little bit more pleasure and a bit of joy, because if you're in a better mindset, you're going to be able to help those around you far more effectively and efficiently without damaging yourself a little more. But yeah, podcasts are probably my favorite thing at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think it resonates with a lot of people watching and listening as well. You mentioned sports chiropractic and having a passion for that because of your personal experience. In practice and in clinic, day in and day out, what are maybe some strategies you utilize or things that you've seen work to be able to attract more of your ideal patients or clients? I assume that many of your ideal patients and clients are more sport and fitness-oriented individuals because of your passion for it. How does that play out? Are there any differences between what occurs in England and America on the patient acquisition side? And how do you think about positioning yourself as that local expert or one of the local experts so that people will really find out who you are, what you're about, and be able to connect with you?
Again, great question. And actually, so my colleague, my vice president, Tim Button, and he's also the owner of the clinic that I now am clinical director in. We've talked about this a lot recently. What is it that makes us at Cleve a little bit different? What is it that brings people to us? And I think what we're trying to do, and I'm kind of taking Tim's words here, so I'm borrowing them a lot from him, is we're trying to create that elite performance environment for every patient. So yes, Tim and I are both, experienced in that elite sporting world. So we're used to having everything on tap, the best equipment, the best, and kind of good people with good intentions around them. So the best people, not necessarily the most long-term experienced people, but good people who are trying to, do the best for the patient in front of them. And we like to think that everybody's entitled to that. So why is it that, Mrs. X, who just plays hockey at the weekends, but loves what she does, or just wants to be able to go out for a walk on the weekends, whatever her level of activity is, why should she not be able to access that all-round attention to her injury in the moment that she has it? Because her life is just as important as an athlete's life, her job, being able to, if that's a desk-based job or, a trade, whatever they're doing, they should be able to access that as well. And so at the clinic, we very much try to create that all-encompassing approach for the patient with physiotherapy, sports therapy. We have a nutritionist, we have acupuncture, we've got, everything going on around chiropractic so that they can get that fully rounded approach. And I think that's the real ethos of the clinic.
Yeah. We have a saying within the Smart Chiropractor, there's an athlete in all of us. And I think that holds true with what you described in your practice. No matter what level you're at, people are trying to get up and move each day to some sort of level. And regardless of whether it's professional, weekend warrior, or casual, it's about helping people live their best lives. You mentioned some of the modalities and options that are available for the patients and clients that come into your practice. Any treatment tools or gear or products that you're hyped on that you think are great that you've been utilizing a lot lately?
We love a bit of tech in our clinic. Obviously nothing's as good as these things, and then all the tech can only be done with our hands. But we want the best available for all those patients. Why should a professional footballer have access to the lasers, the shock waves, and the average person not? They're probably more grateful and kind of appreciative of all of this fantastic kit that you're bringing to them. So personally, I big fan of Light Force lasers. So I use a kind of class 4 laser in my clinic. Setting quite a bit for a lot of acute injury management. We've used it a lot for wound healing. Patient recently who'd had a Morton's neuroma removed, and the scar site just wasn't healing very nicely, and they kept redressing it and giving her antibiotics, whatever they were doing. And so we lasered it on the wound healing and got them back in like every day, lasered that over. I actually took a chunk out of my own finger not long ago and lasered that on the wound healing. So I think that's a great piece of kit that complements what we do with our hands so well. And yes, a shockwave as well. So we have an EMS shockwave that we are, constant. We actually have 3 shockwaves in our clinic because we've got such a big clinic. It was getting to a point where no one could get hold of the shockwave or the laser. So we have 2 lasers and 3 shockwaves. But the other bit of kit that I think is incredible, I don't use it a huge amount. I would refer on to my sports therapists who are much more experienced in using it, is our anti-gravity treadmill. It is so much fun and patients love it because it's a great rehab tool for your athletes. You can take their body weight right down. Have you seen the anti-gravity treadmills before?
Yeah, it's like an Alter G kind of thing. Yep.
The Alter G. Yeah. So great for that end, but also for those patients who tell me, no, I can't possibly run. I'd love to run, but I can't. And, it just hurts my knees. You pop them in there, take, half their body weight off, and get them used to doing it. And they get that cardiovascular gain and the confidence to walk, run, whatever it is they want to do in a nice, safe environment. So yeah, I think they're my favorite bits of kit.
You have a decked out practice and clinic. That is for sure. That's awesome. And as you describe a lot of what you've been able to, what have you been able to do personally within the sports chiropractic world? If you were to put on the hat as the leader, as the president of the BCA, how have you seen the evolution for docs at large within the BCA in terms of sports chiropractic? I know, and here's an example, is that here in the States, we look back 20, 30 years ago, which is a while, but many professional sports teams might have had 1 team out of 10 might have had a chiropractor as part of their health and medical crew. And now it's commonplace and ubiquitous. There's not a team that doesn't. Have you seen something similar? And has anything changed from a regulatory perspective, not only from a mindset perspective? How have you seen that play out over the course of your career thus far?
Yeah, good questions. Regulatorily wise, nothing particularly changing. There are some things that it depends on the sport you're working in as to which profession can do certain things. So if you're working in football, the only people who can do pitch side are the physiotherapists and the sports docs. So there's some of those things. So there's not huge amounts of change there. But in terms of attitude towards chiropractors being a kind of a standard part of a healthcare team for a sports team, it's certainly on the rise. So as I said, gosh, it's 10 years now since I've been practicing. And so when I first got onto the scene, there was probably a handful of us at that kind of professional, like elite level of professional sport. I would say that nowadays it's most teams, even if they don't have a chiropractor in-house, like Tim and I and Ulrich and other people have done over the years, they have someone that they will send out to. So it's far more common now, and we're seeing a huge amount of interest, particularly from our younger chiropractors, in going and getting the grassroots level up. It used to be people would come out, and I know I speak from a place where I walked straight into a pro job, so I had done all the volunteer work beforehand. But sometimes I see new grads coming out of uni and wanting to go straight in at a professional level. That might be great, and but unless you've done the kind of groundwork up, gained some experience, gained some exposure to how that world works, you're unlikely to stay in that club for very long. So we're seeing a huge amount more grassroots involvement. We've got our Royal College of Chiropractors sports faculty are very embedded into things like tug of war championships, like through FIX and all of those arrangements. And we've got the Masters Athletics. One of our associate chiropractors, Delhi, was there last weekend. So we're seeing, lots of kind of, grassroots and kind of great levels of sports actually taking on chiropractors as volunteers. There's a lot of us heading off in, a few months' time in August or July and August to work at the Commonwealth Games. And we'll be there as part of the polyclinics and the athlete villages, providing chiropractic to all those nations who are attending that don't happen to have a chiropractor as part of their team, or they couldn't bring them over for whatever reason. So that, again, it's fantastic to see from the Olympics, however many years ago that was, actually the year I graduated, so 10 years ago, there was, a smaller group of people involved. It looks like at the Commonwealth Games, 10 years later, there's only it's extrapolated and there's a huge amount more people now involved.
That's fantastic. You mentioned a few of the potential opportunities, but I'm going to ask you to dig a little bit deeper. For the docs listening out there that might want to become more involved, where would you recommend that they start? What sort of process would you recommend for a doc who's passionate about sports chiropractic, newer from the graduation sense, maybe doesn't have all that experience, but would love to become involved? How would you recommend they take their next steps?
Yeah, great. So pick a sport that you know, that you enjoy, that you've got a bit of experience of, because that does help. I'm not a very good footballer myself, but I'd at least had exposure to rugby, which is a team sport. So that helped me in that regard. But I think that the best thing that new graduates can do is firstly, get really good at adjusting. Don't forget that no matter what doors have been opened for you or you have managed to open yourself, once you get through that door, you have to perform. And if you are not a good adjuster, hands-on, you're unlikely to make it there. So don't rush yourself into a pro level team before you feel really confident and competent at your adjusting skills, because I know there's always a little bit of tribalism when it comes to professions, and I'm better than a physio, and it all becomes competitive. You got to throw that out the window when you come to this level of sport, because the physio on the bench next to you is fantastic. That is, these are people who know their healthcare, know their game really, really well. You are there to be a specialist at that point. You're not the only person providing healthcare to that athlete. So you need to come with a very specific set of skills that are going to complement and fill the hole that's there in the healthcare team. Sports therapists, again, you're going to be working alongside brilliant sports therapists and rehabilitators. So you don't need to do everything. I needed to be a good adjuster. So that's the first thing I'd get people to do. And then remember the value of experience. So volunteering, putting yourself out there to your local clubs to begin with, just to get some experience and exposure. And you never know who you're going to meet. That's how I got to QPR 2 years out. It was kind of working at different events, meeting different people, networking, and eventually that door opens and then you're ready to walk through it.
Those are fantastic tips. I'm going to recommend everybody listening and watching, please rewind and listen again, because the part about being part of the team player, being a team player, being specialized, it brings up a question for me. Speaking with a lot of sports chiropractors here in the States, a lot of them, maybe not ironically, but it might be somewhat surprisingly, when they work with these high-level athletes, it's very uncommon that they're dealing with pain. The athletes are really coming to them for performance benefits as a chiropractor. Are you seeing the same thing with the athletes that you've traditionally worked with? Is it more performance-based care within the chiropractic realm or pain and rehab?
Definitely a bit of both. So I would say Typical day at QPR, there would be kind of three groups. So a third, a third, a third. So a third of players are coming to you for their maintenance, and that's they're keeping them performing well. I would do a lot of muscle testing. We used to use like dynamometers, like grip strength. We'd look at all sorts of measures for like really regular testing of these players. And my job was to kind of pick out what was going wrong, assess the player in front, and keep them performing well. So that's one group who would only really see you for that. Then you've got another group during the day that would be for injury management. So that would be, they have an ongoing, usually the things that I had to manage were disc neural issues, lots of PARS issues. We had a lot of stress fractures, the really simple stuff to manage in a, well, that got shipped over to me. Anything simple that the other guys kept hold of because you have to be the specialist. So yeah, you definitely had the injury management as well. But then that final third, they were the people who were kind of, it gave them a lot of confidence. And even if all their stats were fine, they knew that they performed better. So they wanted and they sought out that care because they knew that it contributed to how well they felt on the pitch. The stuff that you can't quantify quite so well, but they felt a better quality of their playing, which, and we know confidence is so important in injury avoidance. If someone's feeling confident out on the pitch, they're far less likely to get a soft tissue injury.
I want to draw that line for everybody. And you described it earlier and again right now with whether it was not a professional athlete, just getting on the Alter G, feeling comfortable, and or a professional athlete just feeling more comfortable with their body. There is so much to the mindset of motion and how that interplays with the physical dynamics of movement. It can never be understated. And I love hearing that there is that scope beyond pain, that there is the performance aspect. And it's just such an intriguing part of sports chiropractic. I'm excited to see where the research goes. And if we're speaking about excitement, I'll be remiss if I didn't ask you, what are you excited about this year with the BCA? What do you have going on? I hear there might be a fall event in the future, but anything on the docket for this year that you are excited about specifically within the BCA?
Well, this is a really exciting year for us. Obviously, the past 2 years has been lockdowns, lack of seeing people. So I'm just excited to see people again. That's my most thing. So seeing you at Parker that was a month ago now. That was so exciting. So I'm so excited to get all the BCA members back face to face again in the environments we love. But this year has seen a repositioning for the BCA. We have relaunched with a new brand, with new vision and mission and aims for our association, which say far more clearly than we've ever been able to before what we're about. And so this is the year that we are launching this. It should have happened a couple of years ago, but other things got in the way. So this is the year that we're launching at. And we're really excited for our vision, which is for chiropractic to be integral to UK healthcare, in whichever dome that means. We have a fantastic national health service, but that isn't the whole of UK healthcare. The independent sector in the UK is thriving and has really stepped up to the mark in the past 2 years to provide that depth of healthcare that our nation has needed, while the NHS has, rightly so, focused on COVID. We've been there to help all of those back pain, neck pain patients and every other condition that's walked through the door that's the weird and wonderful that we've seen more of in the last 2 years because they're unable to access NHS care. So we're excited for chiropractic to be part of that and for us to be the home for chiropractors who put patients first. It's all about the patient. And if we can make sure that every patient walking through each of our members' doors, every chiropractor's door in the UK feels that they are being put first, that will be our mission accomplished.
I love it. Where can docs learn more if they want to connect, learn about the mission, see the vision, and become connected with the BCA? What's the easiest and best place for them to take action?
As ever, social media, best place to find everything. So if you pop in, British Chiropractic Association, Chiropractic UK, something like that, you will find us. So we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think we're on LinkedIn as well. We've got all of those social media domains ongoing. We do a huge amount of media here in the UK, really promoting what chiropractic is, the quality and the professionalism that comes with this profession. So all of that you'll be able to find on social media, and then also our website, which is chiropractic-uk.co.uk.
Easy enough. We'll be sure to drop those links down below. Catherine, thank you so much for coming on, taking time out of your day and sharing your experience and expertise with docs out there. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to catch up.
Thank you so much for watching this video on the Smart Chiropractor. To not miss a single thing that's clinically oriented, marketing oriented, or more, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel today.